Welcome to Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance inside the state capitol today in Carson City. We are joined by Keith Pickard. He is a new member of the Nevada State Assembly. How is it, sir?
It's wonderful.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah.
Well, I just presented my first bill today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was a really good experience. I was in front of my colleagues and particularly in my own Judiciary Committee, and they went pretty easy on me. So
you know, we're both lawyers. I don't practice anymore, but you know, we don't. When you're a lawyer, you're kind of interpreting the laws. You're trying to make the law apply to your client's best interest. Now you're writing the laws. I mean, it's like what we learned in law school and stuff.
Oh, it absolutely is, and it's a great experience to, having practiced, understand how we need to strengthen the laws or maybe tune or fix things that don't work as well as we thought they would.
And I got to say, you know, lawyers get bashed, but I will say that in the end, look, you understand how even one word can change or somehow mitigate the intent or ameliorate the intent. And so, you know, look, I'm glad, I admit it, I'm glad when lawyers, you know, it doesn't, not that every legislator has to be a lawyer, but you know, it's important to have that exposure.
Well, we have a unique perspective, and yeah, as the saying goes, no one likes a lawyer until they need one.
Exactly.
But we need lawyers in the legislature because we practice in the area of applying what is written, and so we understand from a practical standpoint how best to write them.
And here's a perfect example. You practice family law. It's critically important. I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road. Criminal law and family law. You are impacting people's lives immediately. And you have realized through your practice that there needs to be some tweaks in Nevada law. And so you're trying to tweak it to the benefit of Nevadans.
Sure, and you know, I think the statistics that were presented to us earlier were that there are more family law cases filed than all other types of cases combined. We have as many courts that are family jurisdiction courts in Clark County as there are general jurisdiction courts, and so we cover quite a bit.
So let me understand it for purposes of our discussion. If we are going through divorce, I know in a lot of states, counties, there's a method where you don't need to file a lawsuit. You can go to mediation, or you can actually submit a joint agreement. Is that right here in Nevada?
That's correct. For divorce, you can file a joint petition, and then it's a summary proceeding. You don't have to go to court. You just file the documents and you get it done.
Now, can that include custody issues?
If there's an agreement and it's part of a divorce action, yes. But if, say, the parents weren't married, now you have to file a lawsuit. The same thing for legal separation.
So let's talk about that, because that's where your expertise comes in, Mr. Pickard.
Yes,
and please.
I have a bill on that because what we want to do is make things easier for the litigants. We want to make sure that if they don't have to go to court, if they're in agreement on all points, they can just take that joint petition, and so we're expanding that to include those other areas.
And let's talk about custody, because look, for better or for worse, some folks choose not to get married. It's just the way it is, and we don't need to cast judgment one way or the other. It's a reality. And so what you're describing is if they're not married, they have to file a lawsuit, but if they were married, they don't?
That's correct.
I mean, that's kind of crazy.
They have to file a contested proceeding. Whoa. And so as a practitioner, we go in, we explain this and say, well, we have to do it this way, but don't worry, it won't become a fight, but we have to follow the procedure.
But there's a cost.
Oh, there's
I
absolutely
assume a greater cost to file the proceeding than the joint petition.
Yes.
Now, let's say that a couple, for whatever reason, wants to engage in a legal separation. We don't know, you know, maybe they don't want to get divorced yet, but they need to legally separate for tax purposes, whatever it may be. Can't file a joint petition?
Can't file a joint petition, and if they want to divorce later, if they decide that the legal separation isn't something they want to continue, they have to file a new lawsuit to do it.
Even though they could have filed that joint petition to start.
Sure.
So, what are your colleagues saying about this?
Well, we're getting a lot of good support, particularly from the family law bar.
Right.
We're looking at means of reducing the caseloads on the courts. And since we know that the vast majority of cases are what we call pro se litigants, these are people that represent themselves, and they really aren't familiar with the procedures. This will give them an opportunity to go in summary fashion and resolve their case without the unnecessary complications.
What about your friends on the Democratic side? They now control the Assembly, and so I presume you want to get bipartisan support. See, it doesn't seem like a partisan type of bill, but what do they say?
Yeah, this is a nonpartisan issue.
Of course.
In fact, in most of the legislation I'm bringing, I have a Democratic colleague who's also a family lawyer.
Oh, nice.
So
there's more of you.
Fortunately, there are 3 of us right
Really?
now that are family lawyers.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Now, I want to talk about one issue where there's some partisan division, just a little bit, and that would be school choice. The educational savings accounts that were passed last year with Republican support. The legislature is now flipped, and the Democrats are in control, but the courts have said that ESAs, a program whereby parents can receive about $5,000 to use as they choose, are constitutional. There's a funding problem that needs to be worked out. But look, politics is a combat sport, and the Democrats now have, they rule the roost. So talk to us about ESAs and where the Republicans go on this.
Sure. The Republican caucus, all of us have agreed to a certain set of principles, and education reform is one of those. I'm a strong supporter of ESAs because part of the need is for school choice, for parents to be able to choose the best possible educational option for their child. No one knows better what's best for the children than the parent. And so the idea of the ESAs, yes, it was held to be constitutional except for the funding mechanism, which we have, we're proposing legislation to fix that piece. But it's critical to be able to address children's individual educational needs.
But you know this better than I. What spooks your Democratic colleagues is that the money could be sent to institutions that in their mind should not be receiving public funds, be it religious institutions, they point to the First Amendment, be it institutions that discriminate, whatever that may means. They also will say, well, why do the wealthy need to get this $5,000 bonus? Let's have a means test. Talk me through this and how you talk with your Democratic friends about it.
Sure. Well, I understand their perspective. I think that it's interesting given that as we look into the weeds, as we get into the weeds of the argument, we see that there's a little bit of a double standard there. Basically, ESAs are about school choice. It's about giving parents the opportunity to pick the best possible educational path for their child. I think it's a little bit disingenuous to pick out ESAs as an avenue for a direction that we don't want to be putting public dollars into certain schools when, for example, we've got Planned Parenthood that many people don't want to fund, and yet we're okay with putting public dollars there. In the end, this isn't about where we're taking dollars and putting them. It's about providing school choice for parents who know what's best for their children.
The question becomes, how far does the caucus go? Because look, I mean, do we look to the governor to veto if we can't get the Democrats to jump on board?
Well, that's certainly an option, and I don't want to speak for the governor. I'll let him speak to that. But ultimately, ESAs were provided in order to give parents choice. And it's not taking away from anyone. It's giving the parents the ability to put their children in the best possible educational format.
So if you consider the political environment, you think this goes?
I really do.
Because look, politics are the compromise in the end.
Sure.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't think it's a question of whether or not we're going to fund it. I think the question is going to become one of how well are we going to fund it. But this is a critical piece of the reforms that we put in last year, and I think without it, then our educational improvements are put in jeopardy.
His name is Keith Pickard. He is a member of the Nevada State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance. You're watching us on Local Edition.